How is everybody doing? And welcome back for another Strength Chat episode. Today, I have got a very special guest for you all. Today, I'm joined by a New Zealand and Commonwealth champion. She currently holds the squat world record with a crazy 223.5. She has picked up heavier, by the way. We'll touch on that a little bit later. But today, I am joined by the one and only Karlina Tongotea. How are you doing?
Thank you so much. I'm doing really well. I just had some dinner, finished training, so feeling full and good.
a solid evening all
Yeah.
around. But yeah, how are you? What have you been up recently? How was life? I know we'll touch on this a little bit, but how was life after Sheffield?
Yeah. It's been I was just thinking about this before I came on. It's been 4 weeks since Sheffield. But all of us are like right in the thick of preparing for Worlds. So it's just this weird spot where you're coming down from a competition but needing to ramp up real quick for an even equally as big competition. So it feels like a whirlwind at the moment.
Yeah, I can imagine. Because as well, how was, I know this is a little bit of a tangent, but how was traveling back as well? Like, did you? Because I know I can only think of so I used to live in Melbourne, Australia for a little bit, and then when
Yeah.
I came back, I actually had worse jet lag coming back than what I did going to Australia. So how
Mm,
were you feeling kind of traveling to
yeah.
and from the UK?
Yeah, I knew it was going to be really rough coming that far. So when I went over, I made sure I was there a week early, and that was okay. But I do think it still took me like a good 4 or 5 days to really feel switched over. So that was very good. And then I did hear that going back home was way worse than coming over to the UK. Um, but I think it just worked out fine for me because I was so exhausted. We left kind of like the day after the competition, and I just like slept the whole time and arrived in the morning and kind of just switched over. So it was okay. Yeah, but made sure I had a few days before I got back to work in real life.
Yeah, because that's it, especially from the event that it was. Just in terms of like the adrenaline and excitement of it all. But I know obviously I did a little bit of an introduction there, but for anyone listening who might not know your background, how you got involved in powerlifting and kind of your progression so far, if you like, just want to give a little bit of a background to yourself.
Yeah, sure. I've been powerlifting for five, coming into my sixth year now. And I've just started doing it because I saw some girls doing it on Instagram. And I was like, whoa, that looks really cool. She's so strong. And she was squatting like 170 kilos, and I couldn't even like fathom that. And pretty much just found a coach, which is my coach now, pretty much straight away. Started competing lots and often, 4 or 5 times a year at the beginning, which I think was really helpful in the end because we had that period of no competitions at all. Um, and we were in a smaller federation that was broken off from the IPF in New Zealand. Don't know if you guys heard about that. Like the US is having their breakup now, but we had a little one
Yeah.
when I first started. So I think for like lots of the IPF community, like I'm seem very new because I just came back last year. But it has been, a long, not longer than other people, but it's been a 5 year journey where we've been working basically nonstop. So it feels longer than it is.
Yeah. And with that, obviously, you mentioned there we'll touch on squats, but from thinking that 170 kilos was unthinkable, did you just
Yeah.
take to squats? Because I know sometimes, and this is for a lot of so I'll usually coach sort of beginners and intermediates, taking to the first couple of competitions. Then all of a sudden, the kind of fine lifts that they really enjoy and really enjoy pushing. Was squats just one of those things that you just took to?
It actually wasn't. When I
Ah,
first started, I was like the deadlift girl, like it took me 6 months to deadlift 200 kilos for this first time. And so I was like the deadlifter. Um, until I moved up weight classes, basically. And so I got thick enough to hold more weight when I squatted. So I think like maybe the last year and a half, I've become the squat girl. So
Yeah.
that's quite new. That's quite new for me. Obviously in my weight class, there's Jess, and she's really the deadlift girl. She's literally got the world record for it. So now I've been like semi-demoted, but promoted to a
Yeah,
squat
yeah.
girl. Yeah, but I love I really enjoy all three lifts. Like there's not a time where you know, some people go through phases of like not enjoying a lift. Like I really hate bench right now, but I just love them all.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's it, and I think that's shown from at Sheffield for anyone that listening that hasn't watched it. Every lifter that came out, you know, yourself included, just looked as though they were just really enjoying the competition, which I think there hasn't been a competition like that, and to see how everyone was awesome. How did you feel on the day? What was your experience like? How did you find it?
Oh gosh, it was just like you said, no other competition ever has been like it. And I really haven't been to any others. So I got nothing to compare it to. But it literally, you know, as someone who, you know, watches like UFC, it really felt like quite similar. Obviously not as many people, but you're on a stage and you just have this like roaring crowd. The screens, the lights, there's a camera in your face. And so like you can imagine what people are seeing at home, because that's what I usually sit down on a Sunday and watch, you know, the walkouts and everything. So you everyone's been saying like you felt like a rock star, and you really did, because I think from the day that we got there, they basically just took care of us. You know, they gave us our own itineraries, and we all had different parts of the day where we had interviews and photo shoots, and just seeing like all of the other like powerlifting greats all around us. It was just like, oh, there's actually no words. There's no words to describe how amazing of an experience it was. And then coming back home, like you kind of had like a bit of the blues, because you sort of like, I like that kind of life. That was
Yeah,
really
yeah.
fun.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I know obviously a lot of people talk about the post competition blues, but for something like that, it's on like another level. I know you
Yeah.
said, because I've actually watched clips back of because obviously it was a little bit like I know what you said about sort of like UFC, but like wrestling as well, where like the coming out, and it
Mm.
was or like boxing, and obviously getting queued up to come out from there. From sort of like an audience point of view, when they announced it's going to be a world record, and you know everyone
Yeah.
started screaming and shouting. I know obviously there's excitement at other competitions when people go to break records or lift a heavy lift, but how was that from a concentration point of view to walk out and have all those screens and then actually think, oh God, I'm gonna have to, I'm going for a world record here.
Yeah, yeah. I because I had my headphones and music in, like I didn't hear it. I didn't hear them announcing what it was. And then when I went out, it was just tunnel vision. It was just like, and you see the crowd and then you just zone in. And I didn't even know that what was on the screens until I watched the live stream. I was like, oh, there's actually like videos of us doing, you know, number one and whatever. And what we had been doing the days before. So I didn't even know that our faces were on the screen.
Right.
I just thought it was like Sheffield or whatever. So I don't know how I would have reacted if I saw my own face on the screen like that. But yeah, I was just really, really zoned in. So I didn't see any of that stuff. So watching it back was pretty crazy.
Yeah, because I know I can only liken it to I know my brother's had a couple of UFC fights, and he said a
Ah,
similar thing of he just blocked it all out, but then actually when you watch it back, you kind of pick up a couple of other things. And with in the build up to it, obviously you mentioned being over in Sheffield the week before. How was how was your prep building up to it? Because I know obviously taking just to extend kind of the world record on your third attempt, was that the plan? How were you feeling going into the competition?
Yeah, I was feeling like right after Commonwealth, I was feeling really good because uh, my body felt good. Everything was moving really well. The lifts were doing what they were meant to do, which was go up basically. And then maybe like 5 weeks out, bench was really not playing ball anymore, and to break my world record, I needed all three of those lifts to like really show up at 100%. There was no other option. So I got like less confident getting closer and confident in winning, because that was all of everybody wanted to win Sheffield, but still very confident in being able to win the 76 kind of battle that we were having. So I was, feeling really good with squat and deadlift. Bench, we're just going to have to get whatever we could. And that was probably the least I've ever gotten since a year ago. So it really wasn't good. But yeah, in the moment of it, because I was sort of thinking about this today, like I got to compete directly against Jess and Agatha, but in the moment, I didn't feel like I was. I was just like, I just need to make my lifts and do what I need to do. And that just needs to be enough in the end.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I forgot your question, but it's kind of just
no, it was in the build up to it, because obviously, when things are going well, because I think, why I want to touch on that as well is because it was kind of Sheffield wasn't that far out. It was kind of is it 7 weeks, 8 weeks, 7 weeks till Worlds?
Oh yeah, so I think like 10 by the time most of us got home.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it kind of like, how did that fall? Like, because you want to do as well as you can at Sheffield, but then also, I can imagine you want to do well at Worlds as well. So it's kind of
I
like,
know.
what was the battle plan? What was the talk around that? Because not only is the traveling involved, because they're then going to Malta as well with the traveling. How's kind of that all being pieced together, and you kind of staying on top of everything?
Yeah. I think it's, we almost just didn't have a choice. It's Sheffield. You had to give it everything that you have. It's I guess sometimes people do like maybe a nationals or a, what is it? What's less than a regional? No, or a regional
Yeah.
before Worlds, where you can take it easy. You can use it as maybe a tester, but I don't think any of us had that like choice to do that in order to get us prepared for Worlds. So I think we're all in the spot where we literally all gave it everything that we had on that day, and we just had to accept that there's a very short turnaround. And now I'm in that, and I'm having to accept that I'm not feeling great. But I shouldn't be, because it's I'm only in my fourth week of my block after putting my body through all of that. So yeah, it's just a funny feeling.
Yeah, because it's kind of, because usually, for I know, competing for or prepping for competitions, you kind of have that focus, and it's rare, especially the level that you're competing at. You'd have maybe a little bit of a bigger gap between competitions, whereas it seems to be like bang, 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 straight after each other, which is for elite level powerlifters is sometimes pretty rare. How have you kind of managed everything outside of the gym? Are you doing a little bit more recovery, and how are you balancing that with work as well? Because I know, for especially chatting to some of the people in Sheffield, it's kind of like, I think sometimes people can forget, looking at Sheffield, that powerlifting is actually an amateur sport, and people have to go to like work afterwards, and everyone goes back to, from being that rock star to day-to-day life. How have you kind of manage that with recovery, fitting in training, and just keeping on top of everything?
Yeah. I always like to recover hard, so I think I can't increase that anymore. You know, the basics like making sure you get enough sleep and stretching and massaging and physio and all of that, eating well, which that too has not been well. It's been good now, but usually you get that downtime after competition where you sort of just like, I'm not going to count anything. I'm just going to eat whatever I want. So that had to be, that should have been cut short and I did not. So lots of those little things, but yeah, I'm pretty lucky. Well, I think I am that I can work like 4 days a week. And so in that way, like I get my training days in. That's only 3 days, but they're long sessions. And I've just always, ever since the beginning, done 3 days. So that just works well for me. I haven't had to do anything extra. But I think it's just, I've had to do a lot of reminding myself that I have been doing this for a long time. And just because it's in that sort of like let down phase post comp doesn't mean that my body's just going to forget how to lift these weights. So, all the work that I've put in the years prior, especially this last year, that's the work that's most important, not like this week where I'm still feeling like I'm on this come down from competition.
Yeah. And do you think that's just because I know you mentioned doing quite a lot of competitions when you first started competing, and that's kind of the advice for a lot of new lifters, to compete regularly and get that experience on the platform. Do you think because you competed quite a lot at an early stage that you kind of just used to being like, all right, okay, so I'm just going into the next phase, the next prep?
Yeah, I have always felt like, every 14, 16 weeks, it's just like another one. This one's really, really tight. So I've never done this tight turnaround before at this like high level. So it will be interesting. I wonder how everybody else is feeling.
Yeah. Because with that, it's kind of from having the Sheffield as a different, because obviously there was prize money available at Sheffield as well. Does and again, this is just something that came to my mind now. Does the how do Worlds compare to Sheffield in terms of like how well you want to? Because everybody obviously wants to do really well at Worlds, but
Yeah.
now throwing Sheffield into the mix, has that kind of mix things up a little bit in terms of how excited you are about certain competitions?
Yeah. I think you're just way more excited for Sheffield and the experience that it's going to be. I haven't done a world championship before, so I'm excited anyway because I've never done that. And so even though it'll be a very different feel, I think in its own right will be really exciting. And then the other thing like we've been having to think about is how much do we want to do at this world championship, because this will be the way that you punch your ticket, like for sure, without having to try and be a wild card to the next Sheffield. So yeah, it's pretty a lot of different things to think of. And with me and my coach have kind of landed on Sheffield's a cool experience in itself, but world championships is equally as important. So we're not really wanting to hold back or whatever at world champs just for money, to be honest. I think that's where we've both landed. It wasn't an easy one because sometimes you're like, maybe I don't want to shoot myself in the foot. But after having experienced it, even if I came away with no money, the experience in itself is just bloody awesome.
Yeah, definitely. And as well, the worlds have been like Sheffield is a relatively new thing, whereas having world world competing at worlds, having world titles and those sorts of things is something that's for the record
Yeah.
books, if you like, to be kept in there.
Yeah.
In terms of because obviously you mentioned there, and this is something that I also like to touch on as well, is for a lot of newer lifters getting involved in powerlifting, I'll always recommend to all the lifters that I train to look at, lifters such as yourself and be like, these is who you want to be watching as role models. And you mentioned there you're always training 3 times a week. Has your has your training in terms of maybe how many times you're squatting, benching, or deadlift, has that changed over time? Or has it just been, because obviously you mentioned there you enjoy all three lifts, and you can
Mm,
see, through your competitions that all of your lifts have just gradually increased and increased. Has it just been a
yeah.
case of just trusting the process? Has it been you've maybe pushed one lift more than the other at certain times? Or is it just, working with your coach to be like, right, okay, let's just keep building on those layers?
Yeah, I think the great thing with me finding Dom and us clicking and things working out and being able to work together for 5 and nearly 6 years is that he's been able to see me from the very beginning and learn basically what works well for me. I'll give him feedback, and most of the feedback is broken, that's not nice, or like whatever, this is fine. So yes, whether I'm broken or not. And we haven't changed like a lot. It's always been like fairly low volume because yeah, I having listened to some other podcasts and learning that sort of like females tend and smaller females to tend to be able to do a lot more volume. That just wasn't me. Even at the beginning when I was in the 64 kilo weight class. So that was just too much. And so we just went sort of low volume, heavy, higher percentages. And that's worked well for us over the last few years. And he'll change things, variations and throughout the lifts to work on certain things that we might find in a competition might have been lacking. But for the most part, it feels like very similar. The last few years have felt all the same. And yeah, I'm just a creature of habit. So the monotony of it is actually okay for me. It doesn't, yeah, I don't seem to get bored.
Yeah, and with that as well, because sometimes it's a case of, the more experienced you get, and those sorts of things. But I know for me, sometimes I just like my coach to tell me what I'm doing, and I know, right, when I walk into the gym, I know exactly what I'm doing. I can just switch off and just focus on the lifts. Is that kind of how you work? Because I know sometimes it can be a case of it's a little bit more of a discussion. The longer that you've been training for, you get an understanding of how your body works, how the weight's feeling, and those sorts of things. Has it become a little bit more? I don't want to say teamwork, because I do think coach and athlete are always going to work as a team. But has it become a little bit more of you speaking about and influencing in the program a little bit, or is it just being a case of, right, this is what I'm doing, I need to go into the gym and do it?
Yeah, absolutely. Like the first thing you said, which is just like, write me a program. I'm just going to turn up and I'm going to do it. And I'm probably not going to give you too much like input at all. And again, that comes from him having been with me for so long that we have the ability to do that. But also, I think this is may not be as common too, is that I always train with him. He's always there with me. And that's really, really valuable. I don't know that I'd be here doing online coaching. I don't think so.
Yeah, yeah. Because as well, having that, I know from having training partners, myself and that sort of stuff, it does make a difference, kind of like training
Yeah.
in person with that. And one thing I wanted to touch on as well, because this was literally I had a conversation last week about this with one of my clients, and basically she's progressing now to weights that she didn't think that she would lift. So her target was to squat over 100 kilos. And now she's doing that. She's broken through that barrier, which is pretty cool. For
Yeah.
you, for yourself, obviously, from starting off thinking, I'll just mention on squats because we touched on it, but 170 kilos,
Mm.
being pretty heavy, but then squatting well over 200. Was there ever a point where it was kind of like, oh, hang on a minute, this is like pretty tough, this is challenging, and was that more of a mindset thing, or just a case of your own confidence in the fact that, well, actually, I've earned the right to put that weight on the bar?
Mm. I think, well, one thing that's been pretty unique or a little bit different with me is that over the 5 years, I have gone up weight classes. So I haven't just been like a 76 for the last 5 years progressing that way, because it is a nice line. When you look at my line, it's just going up, 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 up. But so did my weight. And so that really coincided like perfectly with how good I was getting. And that's a massive thing for the progress that I've been making, because when I first started, I was 69 kilos, cut down to 64, or spent the first year at 72, sorry, decided to cut down. So there was like a lot of time where I was doing weights that I didn't think I would ever, like squat 200 or squat 200, let alone more than that. But moving over to the IPF and having the 76 kilo class, like that was really the point where, like, holy crap, the stuff is moving way better than when I was cutting down to 72 or 64. And so I would love to say that it's just me, but it was like learning early on that cutting wasn't working out for how strong I wanted to get. And that when I finally stopped doing that as aggressively as I might have been, things just changed completely, like recovery, no injuries, the weight's going up. So I think that has a huge part to play in it. I love the fear of being like, oh my God, will I stand up? Like that. I always like to feel a little bit of fear. And I find that if I ever find myself getting used to a 200, that's when it's not moving good. And I'm like, oh crap, I was a little bit too confident there. So I think it's always a little bit, well, for me at least, be a little bit scared of the weight, because it helps you just stand up a little bit easier.
It's a little bit like I have a lot of clients say, "Oh, I'm nervous," and I always say, "I think nerves are good. It means that it means something to you. If you've got a little bit of fear, you can be like, all right, okay, so I've got to concentrate on this, and that's not necessarily a bad thing."
Yeah. Yeah.
With increasing the weight classes, because again, this is something that so I've gone up weight classes, and you see an increase in weight. I didn't do it right the first time when I went up a weight class. I just kind of like ate everything. But do you think, like, do you feel better going up a weight class? And do you think, or why do you think some people are a little bit cautious about going up weight classes? Because I think sometimes there can be more cons to trying to drop weight all the time for every competition, as opposed to being like going where your body maybe naturally wants to go, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. And I think it's just maybe not so much anymore because people talk about it more, but definitely when I first joined, it was such a huge culture to cut weight. Everyone and anyone, first competition, cut weight. Of course, not my coach. He told us not to do that, but you still hear it around you. And I think I remember talking to someone, and she was like, "What's your weight class?" And I said, "What weight are you now?" And I said 69. She was like, "Okay, so you'll be going to 64." Like it was just normal. Like I hadn't even made that decision yet. But because I was so new and hearing all of this, it sounded normal. It sounded like what everybody does. People were going to work during comp week and drinking 10 liters of water and complaining about needing to pee. And so you're sort of like, oh, okay, this must be normal. This must be what happens. Dom told us all to just compete at what you weigh in. So we did. But pretty early on, I was just like, okay, time to cut down to 64, which was our weight classes back then. And, it really wasn't a good time on reflection. When you're in it, you think it's fine. You think it's okay because you're kind of surrounded by people who are hungry and hangry. But then, when I think back, there are times where like I would be, actually crying because I was tired and I was hungry and I just felt like crap. And everything was hard. And I keep this text where I texted my partner that I was feeling that way 2 weeks before a competition, to sort of just remind me like how bad it felt.
Yeah.
because it really, I didn't realize it in that moment. But reflecting, I'm like, yeah, that was not a great time.
Yeah, I think for things like that, it's only um when you're when you're in and amongst it, it's quite hard to see when
Yeah.
there's people around you for stuff like that.
Mm.
Because I know for myself going up a weight class, so I went from the 105s to the 120s.
Mhm.
Funnily, I actually looked at my very first competition that I ever did, and I weighed in at 98 kilos.
Oh my
So
goodness.
I've gone up a little bit more. I was only in early 20s there though, so that's all right.
Okay.
But yeah, it was just kind of a case of just eat anything.
Mm.
And eat anything and everything. But actually, I just felt really tired all the time because I felt like I was just I was carrying too much weight. Wasn't playing as much rugby anymore, so I wasn't getting any cardio or as much cardio as in it, anything like that. But it's only when you kind of look back and think, okay, so this is what I could have done a little bit better. I still need to make sure that I'm yes, powerlifting is something that I enjoy as a sport, but you still need to be a human being in terms of being able to like walk around
Yeah.
and that sort of
Enjoy
stuff. So
life.
say that again.
And enjoy life.
Yeah, definitely. I tell you what, it was really funny. There's I say a mountain. It's not a mountain. It's just like a really big hill, and it's called Rosebery Topping. And I was um we were walking round, and my mum said, "Oh, do you remember when you once ran up there?" And I literally looked up, and I was like, "There's no way I'd be able to run. I'd be able to run up there." I did do it when I was about 16, but it's just that thing of there's a fitness base there which can help with the strength stuff. So yeah, I think
Yeah.
sometimes you can get caught up in a lot of things and actually forget that you still want to feel good when you lift. You still want to enjoy the things that you enjoy the things that you're doing. Um,
Yeah.
so with the weight classes, and then building up to worlds now, already holding the squat world record. What can we expect to see at worlds? What are you do you have any plans, or are you holding your cards close to your chest?
I think I really want the squat that I missed. And I think I'd be happy with like a flat 230. So definitely that's on my plans. I think that's in Dom's plan as well, is that to come back for that and push that further. I really need bench to show up. So
Yeah.
we'll find out in a couple of weeks whether it's going to do that. Even just to get back to where it was a few months ago, that would be great.
Yeah.
And then we just got to see, that sets up quite nicely for deadlifts. And so we're just got to see where we're at and how much we need to push it. But yeah, it'll be really interesting to see how things shake up and where the people in my weight class, where we push each other to and what we might be pushing each other to do.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's from a as a yeah, as a fan, I would probably say just a fan of powerlifting. It's interesting. It's interesting to see and exciting to see. How that will go, which will be awesome. Thanks a lot for taking the time to jump on. Really enjoyed chatting with you and appreciated you. I can appreciate it's late over in New Zealand, but for a couple of things that we've touched on there. I know we've spoken about your own training, but also mindset and moving up weight classes and those sorts of things. For anyone listening, for all the topics that we've chatted about there, the last question that I like to ask is, what would be your take-home points or words of wisdom?
Ooh. I think it's just, if you're thinking about getting started, just get started and do it for you and the things that you enjoy and what makes you happy, rather than looking at sort of like the 1%ers of the world, because you see them a lot more. And hey, you may become one of them one day, because I used to look at that and be like, I could never do that. So it's possible. But when you're getting started, just enjoy it. Don't weight cut. Enjoy the process. Enjoy yourself, and then see where you go.
Nice. I think that's some really good take home points from there. Because it's like with I always liken it to when I played rugby. Everyone always thinks about playing for the country or anything like that, or the team, and it's kind of that thing of if you enjoy what you're doing, you're gonna good things are gonna be happen, but
Yeah.
you've just got to stick with it.
Yes.
Thanks again, Karlina, for taking the time to jump on. If anyone has any questions about what we've chatted about today, or see the training footage that you put out there, where can people reach out to you or find you?
So easiest would be Instagram, and I'm just opening it because I forget what my name is. Karlina 23. Karlina 23. So yeah, that's where I post up a lot of my training videos. I don't hide anything. So you can see how the progress is going and whether my benches are looking all right.
Fingers crossed. I'm sure it'll all come together. But yeah, really, thanks a lot for taking the time to jump on. Thanks a lot to everyone listening, and I will see you all next week.
Awesome. Thank you.